The Power Query is designed to bring data in and then to transform that data. So let's look at the sorts of things you can do. I'm going to click on the Bike Products by Month query. And on the Home tab, I'm going to choose Remove Rows. And I want to remove the top rows. I have the option of removing rows at the bottom of a table, alternative rows, duplicates, blank rows, or even rows that contain errors. So it's very handy to be able to remove rows in your data. So I'm going to choose top rows. And I want to remove the top 3 rows. So I'll type the number 3. When I click OK, I'll have lost this row, and this row. That then appears in my query steps here. The query steps are the steps you've taken to transform the data. If I thought, oh no, I didn't want to do that, we're used to having undo button in other programs, but we don't have an undo button here. All we simply do is hit this cross and delete that query step. So I'm going to delete that step. If I then want to redo that step, I'll simply go remove rows, remove top rows, and remove the top 3 rows. And again, I'll go OK. If I click on the query step before this 3rd step, that's how the data looked before I performed that query step. And then once this query step is performed, this is how the data looks. So I hope that makes sense. The next thing I want to do in terms of transforming this data is I want to promote this first row here to become column headings. So what I do on the Home tab is I choose this option here, Use First Row as Headers. If I click that button, it literally has moved that first row up and they have become headers. Another way to do it is just to hit this button here, and here you can choose Use First Row as Headers as well. I think you'll find it's also under Transform. Use First Row as Headers. So there's a variety of ways that you can do this. I think even if you right click, oh no, that's not an option. Okay, so we've made the first row headers. Now the next thing I want to do is I actually want to remove some columns. We looked at removing rows and that was possible with this button. Removing a column, perhaps this first column here, I'm just going to click this column to select it. And by the way, if you want to select more than one column, hold the Control key and click on each column. Or hold the Shift key and click to choose a range of columns. So for example, if I click here and then Shift click here, I've chosen a range of columns. But I'll go back to just clicking the first column and selecting the first column. To remove a column, I've got a button here. So if I hit the drop down, I can remove this column, or I can remove all other columns leaving behind this column. But I'll remove this column. And it's gone. And also you see it here, my query steps. So these are the steps that are being performed to transform this data. Now I want to rename this column here. You have the option of just right clicking, and you'll be able to rename that column just by choosing the option listed here. Or the other way, which I actually find easiest, is to press the function key F2. And when I press F2, it allows me to rename the column Bike Product. And press Enter. And as you can see, you're allowed spaces when you name a column. I now want to rename another column. I'm going to go to the Sales 2021. Now I notice I haven't actually brought it in. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to go to New Source. It's an Excel workbook, and it's a workbook called 2021 Sales. So I'm going to open that. That'll bring up the navigator once it's established a connection. And in the navigator, I'll be able to choose the sheet Sales 2021 and OK to bring this in. Okay, so now what do I want to do with this particular file? First of all, I want to rename the query. So I'm sitting on Sales 2021. I can right click over here and I can rename. That's an option here. Or I can click it and press F2. That allows me to rename. Or I can come over here and also rename. So there's a variety of ways that you can rename. I'm just going to click over here and call it Sales 2019 to 2021. Enter. And immediately I can see that that query has been renamed. Now I want to rename the orders query. The orders query is here, so I click it, and this time I'm just going to press F2 because I find it's quicker. And at the end I'm just going to add a space, 1997 to 2000. Enter. Then I'm going to go to the orders to query, and I'm actually going to rename that F2, just orders. Then I'll go to the customers query, And I actually want to delete this customer's query, this one here. So I'm going to click on it, and again you could right click it and you could just choose delete, or you could just actually just hit the delete key, almost too easy, and delete that particular query and delete it. And so the customers table is now gone. If I now go to customers 2, I can press F2 and I'll call that customers. Excellent. So everything that you do is recorded in the query steps. And if I go back to, say, the orders, or the bike products is a busier one, I can actually see I renamed columns, I removed columns, I changed data types, I promoted headers, etc. So you can actually easily see what steps have been performed. You can drag steps up and down and rearrange them to change the order in which things are performed, though I don't know why you would do that. You can also delete a step if you hit this cross here. And again, if you right click, you have the option to rename, delete, move also. So just letting you know what you can do with those query steps. Now let's bring in another Excel file. I'm going to go to the New Source button, Excel Workbook, and I'm going to open up the Target and Actual Sales. Open. I want to transform the data as soon as it makes the connection and as soon as I select Sales by Region and OK and bring it in. The first thing I want to transform and add to my query steps for this particular query is I actually want to use the first row as headers, so I'm going to click this button here. I then want to remove the grand total column, so I click on grand total and I'm just going to press the delete key and I've removed that column. I then want to remove the grand total row at the bottom here, so I go remove rows, but I'm going to remove a bottom row and I'm going to remove the first bottom row and OK. I now want to rename the first column, so I'll click on its heading and I'll press F2 and I'll call it region and enter. I want to apply those changes to Power BI, so I could hit close and apply, but I don't actually want to leave Power Query. So in that situation I hit the drop down and I'll just hit apply. And that'll actually update and load all of that data into my Power BI desktop application, but it'll leave me sitting in Power Query so that I can transform data further. Eventually, when all the connection and the loading is complete, I can now save my Power BI file. The whole idea here is I can go into File and I can go into Save As. A Power BI file is naturally a PBIX file, and I want to give it a name. I'm just going to save it on my desktop just for ease, and I'm going to give it the name, I'm just going to give it the name Data Manipulation and save. And so eventually at the very top of my screen I'll see that the Power BI file is called Data Manipulation.